Absolutely, it's
My,
gonna be,
my job,
yeah.
my job and John's job is to put together the information that provides the background between each of those three options so the commissioners can make that political decision.
Have you have you put the bids out for the three studies? Have those gone out yet, or are you, where do those stand
Yeah.
as we sit here tonight?
It's part of the presentation.
Okay.
But yes, we have bid the project,
Okay.
and we've had 5 people respond to it.
Now, this is for 3 different studies, correct?
There's way more
There
than 3
are even
studies.
more than
Oh,
that.
absolutely.
Well,
Yeah.
there's three alternatives in the
alternatives.
study.
3 alternatives
Yes.
in the studies.
But I
okay.
mean, they have to study the hydrology, they have to study the sediment, they have to study all the environmental issues, the wetland protections, the wetland restorations, the fish passage issues. They have to study all those things before this project can move forward. And then they have to do an environmental assessment, part of the National Environmental Policy Act, but basically packages all those things together, considering the 3 alternatives that we talked about.
And where did the money come from to do the studies that started this whole thing? Was it stimulus money? I've given the commissioners, that stimulus package money, but is that where did the money come from for the grant? It did come from that.
It is.
Oh.
It is stimulus money from the
Okay.
from NOAA, the organization that oversees the rivers.
The National Oceanic and Atmospheric
Administration.
Okay.
Yes, and NOAA had a grant program for river restoration, and so to restore free-flowing rivers. And it's a $5 million grant from NOAA that has been awarded to the county for the purposes of studying, and perhaps, if that's the conclusion that the studies say and the Board of Commissioners agrees, to remove the dam.
And the other thing that's important, when John talked about all of the things and processes we need to do, those would be things that would need to be done if the dam were removed, but there are also things that would need to be done if the dam were rehabilitated and used for the purpose of generating power.
So
it really provided us a vehicle to gather all the information, but really not have to commit until all of the information points us in a direction that's most appropriate.
That's a good way to do it. Let's go on, John Violin, with the show here. Okay.
This photo here is taken from Gold Ray Road, which is the dirt road that goes below the reservoir area along the Rogue River. And you can see the little rock outcropping there in the center of the screen.
You can use your pointer and show us there. There you go. Okay.
This area right here, the dam is built right here at that little rock outcropping and goes across the river, and behind that is the area of the reservoir. One thing that I'd bring to your attention is if you look behind where the dam is at now, you'll see a hardwood riparian forest, basically a wetland forest. Those are cottonwoods and other water-tolerant trees that were growing in that area before the dam was built. One of the hot topics on this project is what happens to the wetlands. And one of the things that's important, and we don't understand exactly what will happen to the wetlands, that's part of the studies on this project, but people need to understand is the wetlands existed before this dam was there.
Before they were naturally there.
They were naturally there.
Natural process.
Here's another picture of the same thing. Again, that rock outcropping is where the dam is at and goes across the river. And again, if you look behind there, you see a very healthy riparian wetland forest that was there that predated this dam.
And those railroad tracks are still there, aren't they?
They are.
That's where the original railroad track went. Okay.
In 1903, the Ray brothers had the means and had the ability to dam the river up to produce power. And this is a photo of when they're building the original dam, which is a log crib dam that they built across the river to dam the Rogue River with. I look at this picture and I'm very impressed with the industrious nature of people back then. They didn't have a lot of means that we have today, and they got a lot of incredible things done.
It's amazing, isn't it?
This picture is the one that's been behind us during the show, and this is taken in 1910, about 7 years after the dam's been completed. You see the log crib dam that goes across the river, damming the river. Right here is the powerhouse, which was where the power generation facilities at, the turbines and the generators. These are the head gates up here that control the flow into this area, and so the water flowed through this channel here into the turbine pit, spun the turbines, which turned the generators, and then it exited here and out down the river. One thing to point out in this photo, you saw the 2 prior photos that I showed you regarding how healthy that wetland forest is. Notice what happened to that wetland forest in this. As soon as that riparian, or as soon as the reservoir was built and backed into that wetland forest, it killed all the trees. And so the trees all died off.
That's why it looks that way.
And that's
Okay.
why you see all those sticks poking up out of the water.
Right, I was gonna say, I can see something that looks really weird back there. and
Right.
That's what it was, okay.
Yeah, but then if you notice in later photos, the trees came back. So this is an area that supports wetland vegetation very much, whether the dam's there or not. Again, we don't know exactly what will happen when you remove the dam. That has to be studied still, but it's clear that there's a very healthy history of wetlands in this area.
Now that's a cool shot.
In fact, this is a photo taken in 1952, and the thing that to point out here is you'll see the river. As the river came down, the river basically was braided. A chunk of it broke off and went to the south, as it currently does, but a large portion of it broke off to the north and went out in the middle of this wetland area. One of the things that we look to do with this project is maybe restore some of those flows. So that's all kind of the history of where we're at, and now we have this dam here today. This is the current photo of the area, and you see this very healthy wetland forest back here.
Now, was that water in there, John, due to the water from the dam, the back of the dam?
Well,
Is
again,
that all wet in there?
there's wet soils. This area is inundated at times, but it's also, I mean, you can walk through most of this area. It's not a swamp.
Oh, okay, it's not.
No, you can walk through here. This channel right here that I'm following, that was that old channel you saw in that 1952 photograph.
Right.
One of the things that we're looking at, if the dam is removed, if that's the decision to be made, in the 1964 flood, the flood piled a whole bunch of debris right up here where I'm pointing to, and basically dammed off that inlet. And one of the things that we are asking the contractor to do if the project moves forward is basically, what's the feasibility of opening that inlet up to allow water to flow through here as a means to maybe preserve some of those wetlands if they would be impacted from this project.
That's a good idea. 64 flood changed a lot of that river
Yeah.
at that time, didn't it? Okay.
These are just some general photos of the current condition. This is the forebay, and the water would flow through here and enter the turbine pit over here. This is the powerhouse. One of the things that Danny talked about is the condition of this facility. These retaining walls right here, of which there's numerous ones in the dam, these were all rock and masonry walls. Basically, stone with some masonry concrete around it from 1903. Those are the original walls. Those things are showing a lot of deterioration and are in pretty poor shape.
And the building, the generator building was still the original one?
It's still the original building.
They're 107 years old
Yes.
at this time.
Which also brings up another issue, another thing that needs to be studied with the potential removal of the dam, those additional buildings, is the historic issues
Yep.
with the dam
Oh,
buildings.
sure.
Yeah,
That's true.
and we're working with the SHPO, the State Historic Preservation Office, and our contractor will be doing those studies to see exactly what has to happen to this. This is an uphill version or a view of the powerhouse facility. One of the things I point out is you just look at this facility and that previous facility. This is a big, huge, attractive nuisance. There's lots of opportunities for people to gain access to this, and there are hazards out here that are extreme. And it's an extremely difficult area to secure from us, and the county is facing huge liabilities from entry into this area and people being harmed from being in the area. Pete, you asked about the generators. Those generators are still there.
They're still there.
Those are the generators were put in 1941 when the facility was retrofitted, and they're still there, and they're very interesting. I'm going to be really interested if this project moves forward, just how big of a crane it's going to take to pick those things up, because there's a lot of copper, a lot of cast iron. Those are very, very heavy
Can you
generators.
imagine the technology then versus technology today if you say we're going to start over and
Yeah, John can
begin
describe,
over
those turn by rope.
by rope?
Yes.
Rope.
Really?
Yeah.
From the pressure of the water turns them by, turns that? Okay.
The turbines were down below in a turbine pit, so they're well below this, and so the water flows through the turbines, turns the turbines, and then that turns a big pulley, and that pulley came up into the powerhouse and turned a pulley on the generators. And from what we understand from history is these were the last rope driven generators in Oregon.
And those worked up until 1972.
71. Yep.
71 when Pacific Power said,
Not
anymore, not
yep.
feasible under those things. Wow, I didn't know they even did that. That's pretty ingenious when you think about that.